Soul Drinkers, first omnibus. Pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty good. I had quite a unusual experience reading the Soul Drinkers because I started at book 2. Okay. So that was like what I had read for the most part. And I had read book 3 not too long ago, but it just kind of like hit an empty note. And so just recently my buddy informed me that I needed to watch the whole, read the whole thing. So that's what I did. And horrifying revelation. The Soul Drinkers, the whole reason they remove themselves from the Imperium is because they were tainted by a demon prince of Slaanesh, or Tzeentch, rather. They were tainted by Tzeentch, which is horrifying. Like, they start mutating really badly. They start, like, mutating really badly at first and really quickly. And they think it's a blessing from the Emperor, which is preposterous because Sarpedian gets spider legs, like a horrible arachnid 8. Oh gosh, 8 is the number of Tzeentch as well. He gets 8 legs. Yeah, terrible. So yeah, he ends up like cutting the chapter in half and then butchering the Demon Prince. I liked the first book a lot. It was kind of cool seeing how like a Lord Admiral or whatever haughty title he has, seeing like how he dealt with Space Marines basically just going renegade in front of him. Like, he didn't want to go fight them because that would be crazy. And eventually the Inquisition gets involved, but it's very interesting how the Imperial fleet's just kind of like following them around, and they're just like, try it. The Soul Drinkers were arrogant to the extreme, and I really think that the best, just the first page of the book delivers it just like phenomenally. Inside the pod, Sarpedian could hear only the soft song of the servitor choir and the gentle hum of armor. The battle brothers were quiet, contemplating the fight to come and the many years of warfare they had forged upon them as the pinnacle of humanity. The choir's delicate faces, mounted on brass armatures, turned to the ceiling of the Corvus pod, and as the note from their once human vocal cords rose. So like they have like they're in an assault pod, and they have like these servitors that are there just to sing to them. That's it. That's the whole reason they're there. And okay, whatever. I was trying to find it, but basically the doors of the pod open, but it's not a good seal. The magnetic clamp doesn't seal in perfectly. And so the choir, the servitor choir, their faces get blistered away, and they kind of just like, because they get like voided. They get sent to the void, whereas the Space Marines, they're cool with it because they have armor. So it sets up this dichotomy between like mortals and the Astartes. They see themselves as so much above the mortals. And to the point where, like, other chapters, if it's time to like breach a door or something, like, I don't know, like maybe the Imperial Fists, maybe they would like bring like a melted drill or something, or just whack it with their hammers. But no, they have crews of servants with cutting torches that they wait, and they're just like, come on. And it's beneath them. That sort of like menial labor is beneath them. In the second book, Sarpedian was like, that pilot flew quite well. If he survives this, he'll be accommodated. But like, they land the ship on top of it was actually in the first book. They land the ship on top of an Ordinatus platform, undefended. Things just kind of happen matter-of-factly in the first book. Like, things just kind of happen matter-of-factly. It's, from my perspective, it's almost as if it was just there to prop up the other two books. Second book, fantastic. I've talked about Tectoruk on this channel before. I don't know if I have too much else to say. He's just a fantastic villain. He's cool. He would have been the fifth god of chaos. I'm not really sure how he and Nurgle would decide how undeath goes, but his necromancy is a little bit different than Nurgle. Yeah, Nurgle isn't necessarily a necromancer. I guess that's what the difference between them is. It's a bit preposterous that Tectoruk went to go fight Serpedion head on head because, like, he just used the vortex weapon. I don't even really. I've read this over the course of like several months. I don't really remember what happens in the second book, just besides Tectoruk. And also there's an Inquisitor who's chasing at the heels of the of the Soul Drinkers, and I liked that guy because, like, it describes him. It continuously compares him to his predecessor, who was like, he just cut the chase. He's just almost like a war inquisitor, if you would. He was just like, okay, yeah, that's what we're gonna do. But the Inquisitor in the second one is much more like deliberate and thought out, and like he's cunning and he has plans. And when he goes to talk to the council or whatever, they basically say like, you suck. That's why we had you follow the Soul Drinkers, because we don't want them dead. Which I don't know. I don't know exactly how I feel about that, because like any renegade that studies a chapter can basically just become host to all sorts of terrible things. Terrible things. But at the same time, I mean, the Soul Drink, I don't know. Maybe they just know. Maybe they just know the Soul Drinkers aren't bad guys. Maybe they're like, well, you know, because they kill a lot of demon princes. They kill a lot of guardsmen too in the third book. The third book is all about Telos. Telos is used in the first book to kind of like show the reader that there's something happening to this chapter that's terrible. He's got like super strength. He's got this like gelatinous form that like the bullets just like ripple through. He's a horrifying thing, and like you're reading the first and second book and you're thinking like, well, you know, he's just got super strength. He's like a super space marine, but no, if you were paying attention to it the whole time, he's like some sort of like not per se like possessed chaos marine, but like that sort of like, well, I guess just a mutant, just a mutant beyond proportion. I guess, yeah, not possession, but mutation to a terrible degree. So Telos, yeah, he starts off like that. In the second book, he's a champion, basically. I mean, he's a champion in both ones, but in the second book, he's a champion. But they have to leave him behind on Stratix Luminae. Tectoruk's wizards, they were still able to control the army of the dead after his death. And so, it says in the third book that Telos and his men had to kill thousands to leave there. Thousands to leave Stratix Luminae. And that changed them. That made them devout to the blood god. And in the first book, you've got Tzeentch and Nurgle. In the second book, you've got kind of like a standalone god. And in the third book, you got Khorne and Slaanesh. So thank you, Bin Counter, for providing that like coverage of chaos. That I'm glad everybody got their turn, because it was fun seeing basically the Soul Drinkers deal with each of them. My favorite character in the whole series is in the last book. His name is Zarius. He's a Lord Commander, and he's just a good guy. He's just so genuine. I don't know. I mean, maybe he doesn't belong in 40K at all. Maybe he just doesn't belong at all. But he goes and he fights, like, you know, when he's in his Baneblade, once his Baneblade no longer has communications, he goes and fights on the rifle line. And he says one of the greatest lines ever in Warhammer. Ever. Space Marines are insane. They're just children. They're just children that have been pumped up with all sorts of augmetics and given armor and swords, and they will charge a bunker with their sword if they can. They'll just charge. They're preposterous, and I love how he starts off the battle for the city of Gravenhold, thinking that the Crimson Fists are going to be like assets, and then as soon like oh yeah, and they hijack one of his regiments. So as soon as that happens, he just like he doesn't even bother talking to them. He just like he knows that he can't tell them to leave, but he knows that including them in his battle plan will just be more destructive than anything else. And it is fantastic when the Crimson Fists get baited to go fight the Dark Eldar guy. The Dark Eldar guy, his plan was pretty cool. The whole plan, everything he does, pretty cool. Won't spoil it. Just it really is an insidious Dark Eldar scheme, without precedence. I think, the scheming, and this whole thing is pretty good. If I was gonna knock this series down, there's just some things that just like happen matter of factly. It just matter of factly kind of like they find the broken bag. They just find the space Hulk. Like they just found the space Hulk, and then they kind of just killed Abraxas, the Demon Prince, but that just happens in the first book. And so I feel like maybe the pace, because like this is not a long series. This is only like 700 pages for 3 books. It's not that long, but I for whatever reason, Ben Counter wanted to keep it quick, and so he kind of just jammed it together at the end of the first one. But it's like okay, because they went and they already fought a Demon Prince. They like invaded a Nurgle plague world, and they went on these like barges, and they had sea shanties, and they went out and they fought sea monsters. They weren't sea shanties, but they should have been. And it was like a whole adventure. And so afterwards, as the reader, I'm like, okay, I thought that was it. I thought that was kind of the point. And then it's just like Abraxas, and then it's like broken back, and you're like, okay, why not? Let me finish this. Overall, I'm gonna give it a really, really, really low 8 out of 10. I think if I had to, it's even with all these revelations that I had, and with how quick it is of a read. I don't know. It just didn't hit the same way. Not this time around.